In today's video, let's take a closer look at condo prices across the GTA. In my most recent video, I covered the GTA real estate market and the Toronto real estate market according to the TREP Resale Market Report for the month of May 2023. And there were a lot more numbers contained to all property types, different types of areas, different categories and metrics. But in today's video, I wanted to take a closer look at condo prices in the major condo markets of the city of Toronto and the greater Toronto area. How are condos performing? More particularly, how are they performing on a month-over-month basis, a year-over-year basis, and what can we expect going forward? As always, this is SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Wiltshire Realty Inc. You can find my contact information on the screen and in the description box. Furthermore, feel free to join my exclusive where I share these tables, these numbers, these trends, and news items and my opinions on the market in advance of the videos and the social media content you see. A lot of fun stuff gets shared in that chat. Anyways, enough of all that. If you find this video informative, feel free to subscribe, follow, and comment. And lastly, you can get in touch with me with further questions with the contact information in the description box. Starting out, let's go through some basic numbers. The average sold price for a condo across the GTA came in at $748,000 in the month of May 2023, and this is for a total of 2,568 sales that occurred. Now, this average sold price is down 3% year over year, as I covered in my most recent video. But how is it holding up in the most immediate months? Let's take a look at it month over month. Well, month over month, it's actually up as opposed to down, because it is up 3.3% month over month, where in April of 2023, we had an average sold price for a condo of $724,000. Now, it's important to keep this in mind. This is across all condo types, so lofts and apartments, not including obviously condo townhomes. That's important to mention as well. Furthermore, this is across all sizes, all ages, and all bedroom numbers. So accounting for studios to 3 bedrooms, accounting for $500,000 depreciated properties at Yonge and let's say Steeles, to $4.5 million penthouses that sold in downtown. But with high volume, obviously, once again, 2,500, averages obviously account for the variances and differences. The median here was $660,000. Then focusing on the city of Toronto proper, right? So the 416, we saw an average sold price of $784,000 for a condo across the city of Toronto. This was still down year over year, this time to the tune of 1.1% down year over year, as opposed to the 3% we saw across the GTA. However, similarly, on a month over month perspective, it is up, and it is up higher than the entirety of the GTA is up. Here, we're seeing an increase of sold price month over month of around 4.4%. Because in April of 2023, we saw an average sold price of $754,000. Once again, in May, we're seeing $784,000. And this is also up from the month previous as well. And that's something I mentioned in my most recent videos, which is not only for condos, but all these numbers for all other property types are up not only month over month, but for the last consecutive 3 months because of the spring market being hotter than expected. And this is something I'll touch on going forward in terms of what to expect for the condo market into June and July. But now let's get into more specific numbers, breaking down the city of Toronto to Toronto Central, Toronto Western, and Toronto Eastern. Toronto Central, which is really primarily, for lack of a better word, you can think of it, any stretch of Toronto between Bayview and Dufferin. Of course, that's not an exact science. Sometimes Toronto Central is considered a little bit east of Bayview and a little west of Dufferin, but for the most part, you can think of anything between Bayview and Dufferin. The average sold price in May of 2023 came in at $838,000. So breaking the $800,000 threshold. Thus far in this video, we've looked at the 700s with regards to the GTA and Toronto. Obviously, Toronto Central is where the most coveted condos are with regards to the municipality that is Toronto, and it's also where the most valued real estate is with regards to all property types. Of course, you have some expensive areas even outside of Toronto, but let's say inside of Toronto, you have some very expensive areas in Toronto West and Toronto East. There's no question about that. But for the most part, the more central you are, the more valued obviously the real estate is. And this is definitely most true for condos out of every other property type. This $838,000 represented, once again, no surprise, a 4.4% increase month over month, nearly 4.4%. Because in April of 2023, we were looking at an average sold price of $803,000. But that's not where we saw the biggest increase month over month in terms of percentage point, because actually that's reserved for Toronto West. Because although the average sold price of Toronto West for May of 2023 was far less of Toronto Central, here we're in May of 2023, we saw Toronto West come in at $702,000. The percentage increase was the biggest at 4.7% increase, because in April of 2023, the average sold price was $671,000. And in my opinion, the main thrust of Toronto West in terms of the most coveted condo markets within Toronto West is the Etobicoke region, particularly Mimico, but also the rest of the Etobicoke also performs very well as well. And overall, we're looking at 351 sales for Toronto West. Now, the other region in Toronto, not Toronto Central, not Toronto West, is obviously Toronto East, and Toronto East is historically the cheapest condo region within the city of Toronto when broken down by those categories, West, Central, and East. And here we saw an average sold price of $635,000 for condos within the Toronto Condo Market within Toronto East. And this should really put into perspective the price gap and the price difference between Toronto Central and Toronto West and Toronto East. Frankly, the most affordable condo options do belong to Toronto East, whether that's affordable because the overall values are lower in the Toronto East region, less desirable areas, or because the condos are much older. And I would say it's probably a combination of two, because Toronto West does have its fair share of older condos. So does Toronto Central, there's no question about it. But in my experience, I have found the oldest condos and the most depreciated condos to belong to Toronto East. Once again, that's nothing necessarily wrong with that, right? Because there's a lot of condos that are very old, but they're very good end user options, right? They were built in the 70s and 80s, and most likely you're gonna get a humongous unit with maintenances that are high, but nonetheless, it's not falling apart or anything. But the appreciation upside of those units that are really good, but really old, as a result, cheaper is less, right? The appreciation upside is less. Obviously, that's simplifying it because Toronto East is a huge region. You also have your new condominium stock as well, or newer condo stock in areas that are yet to be fully developed. Nonetheless, though, we do still see a 2.8% increase month over month with regards to the Toronto East region, because the average sold price in April of 2023 was $618,000. So a negligible increase, but an increase nonetheless. Now, thus far, if you've seen the pattern, GTA wide is up, Toronto wide is up. Toronto broken down to Toronto Central, Toronto West, Toronto East is up. This is the number that surprised me the most when we break it down to downtown. And in this video, I do not look at Midtown and other more compact communities in of themselves. I do that in other videos. I did that in one of my most recent videos where I looked at condo prices by major intersection. So go watch that. But particularly looking at downtown Toronto, and most particularly looking at C1, which composes really 60 to 70% of what people consider to be proper downtown C1, the most central region of downtown Toronto. Here, the number surprised me because the number is $799,000, the average sold price in the month of May with regards to the downtown Toronto condo market. Insofar as C1 is concerned, the average sold price came in at just shy of $800,000 at $799,000. Now, the reason this surprised me is not the number in of itself, but more so due to the fact that the number is down month over month. It's down 1.2%, dropping from $809,000 to $799,000. Now, this is nothing to be really concerned about. It's a negligible drop, 1.2%. In dollar figure around $10,000. But it's surprising because not only did I not anticipate a decrease, I didn't even anticipate it being flush with last month or even with last month. I actually thought it would be more on par with Toronto Central. We would see a 3 to 4% increase month over month. That was just from the sales I was seeing, the buildings I was looking at, the areas I was looking at. Of course, that is the qualitative side of things. Clearly, the numbers on the quantitative side of things disagree. Nonetheless, though, the eastern half of downtown, which is considered C8, and as always, if these TREB codes confuse you, C1, C8, W this, E that, you can click the links in the description box where it takes you to the interactive TREB maps. But downtown Toronto East, particularly C8, was up 3.7%, nearly 3.7% month over month, where we saw the average sold price of $774,000 for Toronto East, up from the $747,000 in April for downtown Toronto East. Now let's take a look at the major condo areas outside of the city of Toronto. Obviously, we took at the GTA overall off the bat, so these numbers are included in those numbers. Let's take a look at York Region and Peel. And here we start to see the negative side of the market and the more interesting side of the market, because putting aside C1, which was once again barely a decline, only a 1% decline, all areas within Toronto that we have taken a look at so far in this video have shown an increase month over month and year over year. But once we leave the city of Toronto, that becomes a little bit more complicated. Let's start with York Region, which in this case, York Region, we're really talking about Richmond Hill, Markham, and Vaughan. Those are the cities within York Region that have the most condos to even speak of. When we take a look at York Region, we see an increase of 0.24%, barely an increase at all, because when we look at the York Region Condo Market, as of May 2023, we see an average sold price of $717,000. Once again, only barely up from April of 2023 at $715 in April of 2023. And as I said, we're going to see that the story in York Region is a little bit more complicated, and it's going to continue a theme in this video. As we established earlier on, Toronto has been for the most part up month over month. When it's been down in terms of C1 downtown, it's been barely marginally down. And any other areas we covered within the city of Toronto, if we were to cover them in this video, we would see the same result. Well, York Region, the results are more mixed. It's more complicated, right? As we will see when we expand into York Region, for instance, starting out with the municipality of Richmond Hill, my favorite municipality within York Region, we see that prices are only marginally up 0.9%, coming in at $686,000, seeing an increase once again of 0.9% from $680,000. Barely up to the point where it's not even considered an increase, right? $6,000 could have gone either way if a couple of sales went either way, right? But on the flip side, we see that Vaughan is very much so down, actually. I mean, the average sold price for Vaughan condos within the GTA condo market, particularly Vaughan Condo Market here, we're looking at $695,000. This is a drop of 3.8% month over month, because in April of 2023, the average was above a $700,000 figure. It was at $723,000. When we go into Markham, once again, we do see an increase, but a marginal increase of around 1% month over month, coming in at $760,000, an increase from the $751,000 figure we saw in April of 2023. So the results are a bit more mixed here in York Region, right? And if you watch this channel for a long time, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of the Vaughan Condo Market. I prefer the Richmond Hill and Markham Condo Market overall. I would probably have to say even the Richmond Hill Condo Market I think is better than the Markham Condo Market, but it's questionable, right? It can go either way. A lot of the newer Vaughan condos are not frankly that good. Once again, just in my own professional and personal opinion. So thus far, we have established that Toronto overall is up for the most part. York Region, the results are a bit more mixed, up and down. Pretty, I would say in summary, flush with the previous month and pretty contained. But this is where Peel comes in, because Peel is on the negative side of the spectrum. Peel has struggled and will continue to struggle. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at the numbers here. Peel overall, which is pretty much Mississauga and Brampton, for the condo portions, obviously, Peel is down around 2.7%. And by far, it's the cheapest region within the GTA, right? Coming in at $623,000 on an average basis, down from the $640,000 figure we were taking a look at in April. And not only is Peel overall down, but when we take a look at Mississauga by itself and Brampton by itself, we see the same thing. We see respectively Mississauga is down 3%, Brampton is down 0.5%. And this is once again not just for this month, right? But if we were to take a look at the last couple of consecutive months, overall Peel Region has performed the worst.